Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dadsigner podcast. I'm Michael Smith, your host, and today I am joined by Brad Stoneking. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Brad and I met at Creative South briefly. Creative South is a thread of this podcast, but I originally came across Piedmont and Brad through Todd, who was a former guest on this show, and so yeah, I was excited to have Brad come on and talk about his work and his family. So tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from, and a bit about your family.
Well, my name is Brad Stoneking. I run Piedmont Brand Company right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, in a little town called Fuquay Varina. I'm the number one graphic designer in my family. So, like, there's nobody else that I know that lives with me that's better at what I do than what I do. I am a father to two daughters. Isla is 11 and Ava is 14. So I'm navigating middle and high school right now. I still have my hair, which is nice. So I think that like it's going well. And I have an amazing wife who kind of, wrangles us all and keeps us all in check. Her name is Crystal. And if she's watching this, I love you. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Just a graphic designer, nothing fancy.
Nice, nice. And the brand is Piedmont Brand Co. Is that correct?
Yeah, so just Piedmont Brand Co. When I right after COVID, or kind of towards the end of COVID, I decided to quit my career as a creative director for orthopedic marketing agency, which is really kind of boring work. But I quit it and decided to kind of go off on my own. I didn't really have like a name for the business, and so I was like inspired by like these, you got junk in the South, at least you got junkyards and you got like basically whatever boring ass company. And then they're just like where they're located at. And I live in the Piedmont of North Carolina. So I just like Piedmont. And then I'm a brand company because I deal with brands. So that's where the brand I probably should have done something a little bit more creative, like stick shift or, something like that. But I just wanted to have a business that I could start and go with. And I was like, I'll change it down the road. But it's been 5 years and I don't really see the point in changing at this point. I also run, I don't know if you can kind of see a little bit. I also run Dead Tooth, which is my art project. It's all the stuff that I can't do through Piedmont. So it's usually like woke stickers and, you know, uh, you know, joke things and just having a good time. And it allows me to kind of like separate my life a little bit. So I have my art bucket, and then my design bucket. Because I spent years trying to like make them work together, and they just were constantly clashing, and people didn't quite get it. So it's been nice to have like a little separate brand for that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talk about their graphic design experience like it is everything in the world to them, and I very much view what I do as a service industry and not so much like an extension of myself. That's where Dead Tooth exists. Dead Tooth is that extension of myself, and Piedmont is just the work that I get paid to do to keep the doors open and to feed my family and Lucy's family who works for me. And like we do have, we're growing, so that's good. But it's just an agency.
Yeah, one of the things you said to me was you do the work that no one else wants to do. So, what type of work does Piedmont focus on?
Well, so like I think in the modern age, you go on any of these social media platforms and you have a bunch of graphic designers that are, really good at their skills, but they're mostly performative, right? They're creating things out of thin air that don't really have any real brief. They're fixing logos that never really asked to be fixed. They're giving commentary on, you know, rebrands that were desperately needed and probably better than the original to begin with. And they're doing all of this for likes, and there's probably some people that are monetizing off of it. But my focus and our focus here is really just to be graphic designers. Like sometimes, it's like I joke with my friends that we're just like plumbers, but instead of like fitting pipes together, I just move boxes on a screen and then make them work, right? So many people are like, "Oh, I only did 13 brands this year." And I'm like, "I did 2, but I also did $500,000 worth of other business that was like brochures and digital ads and pump screens and all of the little things that the logo designers that exist in the world won't touch. And so, like, I mean, when I started the business, I was definitely in the mindset of like, I like building logos and I want to be a logo designer. But what I quickly realized is that once the logo's done, if you don't have anything else to offer beyond it, the client's going to go find somebody like Piedmont to fill in all that gap, right? And so, yes, we still do brand design. It's still very much part of what we offer. But we also, I don't think that brand design ends with the logo and the vision, like the quick little brand guide. I'd made some colors and some blah blah blah. You know, I've got plenty of people online that are like, I don't do logo design. I do brand design. And, you know, I don't think that even they really do brand design. Brand design is who made the business card, who made that little pop-up banner that's going to sit at their trade show, who designed their t-shirt, who designed the mural that's in the store. When you walk into a convenience store and you see the little thing that's like, this is on sale, who made that stuff, right? That's the stuff that I like making because it doesn't require me to put my personality into it. It just exists. It gets printed. It's a physical thing, or it's a digital thing that gets shown on a screen. And I do so much of that stuff that I've actually forgotten about work that I've done. And that, I don't know if that makes me a better designer than other people. And I don't really care, quite frankly. I'm just different.
And kind of a twofold question: how are you finding your clients? Like, what is the story you tell them around that? That
Oh, yeah.
is, and then two is like, are you pricing on retainer? Are you like, what are you doing to charge?
So, um, I would prior to hiring Lucy, who just started working for me a couple months ago, and even when Todd was working with me, I never really gave much thought about how to go find clients. Like, I definitely any designer that sits and tells you goes, I don't search for clients, they're lying. Like, I think that like I've been a graphic designer since 1998. I don't know how many was that, like 27 years or something like that. I still don't know how to find clients. And it's not because I don't find clients, but I don't do anything that actively seeks, like, I don't, I occasionally will send out like a cold email to somebody that I don't know and be like, hey, I'm in this space that you might be interested in. Would you be interested in having a conversation? And I've maybe done that in my entire career 10 times and it's only worked out maybe once or twice. So a lot of how I get clients is by making connections. um, I work with Shell Oil. They're one of my retainer clients, and how I got that job is because 25 years ago I was in a rock and roll band, and I met this girl named Katrina who was video recording rock and roll bands, and we just became friends. And then she went off to build a life and become this like really awesome marketing person, and I went off to like I switched from a guy that made posters for fun to a guy who did design full time and was in rock bands for fun. As I grew, I reached out to her maybe right after COVID, like when I was deciding I was going to go off on my own. And I'm like, hey, you're at Shell and you're kind of in this like area of like marketing. Would you ever have the need for some extra design work? And it started out with just like a couple projects here and there. And now they account for about 35% of our gross annual income here, and then that group introduced me to another group that is like a sister company or like a subsidiary, and they account for probably 55% of our overall revenue, right? And it was just like, it started out with just like, oh, can you just do this project for us? And you know i am i've am not an easy person to talk to all the time because I'm very opinionated, but I'm an exceptionally easy person to work with because I care about the craft and I don't care about my ego getting in the way of that. Like I have this thing that I'm not afraid to tell a client when I think that they're doing the wrong thing, even if their budgets are way higher than anything I've ever possibly fathomed. You know what I mean? And at first I thought it was going to be the thing that I would shoot myself in the foot. I'd say something dumb, but I think that corporations in particular, people with budgets, they hear a lot of bullshit and they know how to kind of sift through that bullshit. And so I just don't with bullshit. That's a lot of cussing, and I'm sorry for that. So anybody that heard this through, I just don't play the game of like snake oil salesman. You know what I mean? I'm very honest about what we do. I set an honest price that is higher than some competitors and way lower than other competitors. Um, I do retainer model for larger businesses, but I don't just run out the gate with retainer model. I always start with probably 2 to 3 months of engagement where it's just project based. And then what I do that I think I excel at is that I start to notice the holes and I go, okay, you're not doing this, but you could do this, and it would be something that we could easily knock out for you. It wouldn't cost you nearly as much, as you think it would, and we can just test it and see what the ROI on it is. And oftentimes it becomes like, okay, well, it went from being like a one-off little thing, and then it does well, and so now it's part of the overall thing that we do for them on a regular basis. And so the other thing to me is that I think separates me is like I will say no to people that I don't want to work with when I know that I'm a pretty good reader of people, and I think that if like I can get the vibe that we're not going to mesh well, I will say no. But if we mesh well and you just have projects that I think are complicated, I won't say no. So I'm not a yes man fully, but like once you are in that retainer model with me, I will, if I don't know how to do it, I will either A, figure it out, or I will hire somebody as a contractor to do it better for me, for you. That's how I feel about the business, is that we are problem solvers. More than anything, we're not, I don't know that I'm necessarily the most creative person in the world. I don't know that I'm definitely not somebody who always has the right answer. I fail just as much as I succeed on things. We cater to a kind of client that doesn't want to deal with BS. And we cut through all of it by being honest, by, always, solving the problem first. And if we don't, like, sometimes solving problems requires creating more problems, and we find solutions to those problems as well. So, just the service industry. We're not. It's not. The Brad Stoneking hour where you get to hang out with Brad. Nobody cares about me, and I'm okay with that. Like I got a family, and they care about me, and the design that I do. It's effective. It does its job, and if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here.
The other thing I was curious about is your dead tooth art.
Yeah, yeah. Tooth. It's a tooth. That's isn't
Yeah.
it?
Did that is that like, were you always an art kid, or like you said you were in bands, but was Dead Tooth like the art side of you that like kind of always existed, and it's like the piece of you that um allows you to express yourself? Or how did that grow? When did you
so
develop that further?
So I've always, I will say I've always been kind of an artsy kid. I was a theater major. Like I loved theater in high school. So like I don't mind projecting and talking and moving my body when I talk. I'm a very animated person, even just in regular life. But I didn't have a lot of super close friends when I was growing up. I had a couple, but they were kind of nerdy. They were into like Magic the Gathering and Smashing Pumpkins, and we would just sit around and listen to Nine Inch Nails, and I don't know. It's just like I I always drew things. I really wanted to be a comic book artist when I was a younger person. I realized like probably in high school how hard that is. It's like I struggled really with the human form, and if you can't draw a human body in various like ways, especially hands are like the worst to me. But if you can't do that and just do it, like there's it's a hard job to get into. And so I started out like, yes, I want to be an artist. I love art. I love it. I have sketchbooks and learning how to paint. And my first really like attempt at making logos was recreating logos on the front covers of comic books like Spider-Man, and Hulk. And I thought there was a lot of personality in those logos. And so that was kind of like what kind of got me into design. If I'm looking back on it, I never really considered it a career at all. Like I was like always fascinated with how pages were laid out in comic books and like, your eye guides through. And, I could always tell when somebody had fucked up in a comic book because I didn't know what panel I was supposed to be reading. I was like, that's bad design, looking back on it. But once I got into high school and I got introduced to girls and marijuana and, theater, art really did take kind of a back seat for a while. Like it changed. Art became something different to me. I was definitely still like, you know, wore weird clothes. I had an obsession with Woody from Toy Story. So I collected all these like Woody dolls and shit like that. It was really weird. I don't know. I think I just laughed at his name. But after high school, like I was really kind of I went to the New York School of the Arts to audition to be one of their like to go to school there. And I don't know how the process went. I just remember getting home and being told that like we couldn't afford for me to move to New York City to pursue this. And so I know I went through like a couple of years where I felt really defeated. Like so that is when I was like, well, I really like music. When I in saying music, I was in musical theater a lot, so I like singing. I know that sounds, it's not the coolest thing to say, but I like singing. I sing all the time now. I sing to my kids. Anytime they're mad at me, I'll sing back what they're mad at me to them. They hate it, but it's like they live in a musical. And there's probably dudes in black t-shirts that are like, man, that's not cool, but I don't give a shit. But so I can sing, and so I was like, well, I'm gonna join bands. I loved metal, so like I'm gonna go west. I'm just gonna head west, right? And I started going towards like Colorado Springs area, and I was working at an Applebee's in Colorado Springs, and I couldn't find weed. This is before weed was legal in Colorado, and so what do? You go to the back where the chefs are at and are the cooks, and you're like, hey, who back here's got some weed? And I met this guy Jake, and he was like, oh, after this we'll go back to my place and we'll get high as shit and we'll hang out, right? Became a great friend. And while I was there, I met his roommate named Ben, and Ben was like an amazing guitar player. And he's like, I got a band back in Omaha, Nebraska. You should come and try out for this band. And so on October the year 2000, we went to Omaha, Nebraska. I auditioned for this band. I met all these dudes. It was really cool. It was the first time I really felt like instant connection with people, And I felt like, wow, this is something I could really do. So I immediately moved all the way back to North Carolina. I packed up everything I could into my little Volkswagen Golf, and I didn't tell my parents where I was going. I just went to Omaha, and I called them. I didn't. It was in the middle of winter when I moved there. It was like January. I didn't even own a coat, and like snow is up to my knees, and all I got is like maybe some jeans and a sweater. So I just moved here with nothing but like, I spent 15 years in Omaha, and I was in multiple bands and did some touring. It was really fun. And when I was in bands, everybody needs a poster, like, so I was like, well, I have some art skills, some design skills from high school, I really never gave any shit about, so I started kind of dipping my toes into it. And, I had kind of like, because I had a computer with Photoshop, I'd always like, people would always be like, oh, can you design this thing for me? So I'd always done little stuff. But being in that band, that first band, I made a lot of posters. I did some CD design artwork. I made some t-shirts. I actually screen printed, like learned how to screen print myself. And I was like, man, I like this more than I like the band aspect to it. And the band aspect, as much as I enjoy it, I hate living out of vans. I hate ramen noodles. I hate sharing like one shower a week with like 5 dudes. Like it's just nothing fun about being in a local band trying to break out, right? And so I decided to put myself back through school and become a designer, and the band really took a back burner. And even through the beginning, probably the first 10 years of my career where I was like being a designer, I still had bands and I didn't quit music until I had a kid. And I was forced, not forced. I I had a bandmate who was like, "Hey, man, we want to go on tour to support this new EP that we dropped." And I mean, the EP had been out like a month, and my kid had just been born. And I'm like, "There's no way I'm doing that, dude. Like, I have a child, you know. Like, I'm not the best father at this point in my life, but I'm not going to leave my wife with this brand new child. It's not going to happen." And I got kicked out of the band, and that was the last time I was ever in a band. Um, and so it's been 14 years. I still miss it, but I made a whole life out of it, like, and I got a better one. I think I got the better deal. So I will always have a soft spot in my heart for hardcore kids and like, breakdowns. I could never do it again. It's not in me. I don't have that dog in me anymore, is I think what the kids say.
What did obviously you quit the band when or were kicked out when your daughter was born. What other ways did like having kids change you?
I think so. I'll be completely honest with you. I never wanted to have children. Was I got through my 20s without kids and STDs. I don't know how, but I just managed to get through both I got to where I was like 30 and you know, I met my wife when I was like 29, and when I met her, I was like, this is the first person I've ever been with that I would even consider remotely having a child with. And I didn't even understand the implication of it. At first I struggled as a father and as a husband at first, because when you spend your whole life focused on just making yourself the center of your life, and then you have to give that up immediately. You like, and nobody tells you that. Nobody says all the dreams that you have are still there. They're still valid dreams. They're just not as important as these other things. Um, it's a hard pill to swallow, and you end up with, I mean, for lack of a better term, you end up with a little bit of resentment, and you're like, why did I do this to myself? In order to be the best version of myself for my children, shouldn't I be pursuing my things, And so there's that battle, right? Of like, there's this little person who can't express their true feelings and emotions, and they need me, and they don't even know that they need me, but they definitely need me. And then there's me, who needs to still experience like all of this like outside kind of stimulation, outside stimulation, right? And I probably made my wife pretty angry for a lot of years by just being kind of very selfish and not like fully committing to the bit of, you're a dad now, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I hate to sound like my parents, but I grew up with this idea in my head that like once you have a kid, it's kind of the man's job to do all of these things and care for your, make sure that nobody. So I worked a lot, like I started working way more than I ever did. I was a salaried employee, but I'd put 60 hours a week in, you know, and I missed out on so many things. And it was COVID that like, I had when COVID hit, I had a kid that was starting kindergarten. I was like in middle of kindergarten, and I had a kid that was in like third or fourth grade, right? And when kids are that age, they require socialization like nobody's business. Like, and I've got these two little kids that all they desperately want to do is just play with their friends and be around other kids, and they can't, I don't know, man. I saw that like, I was a creative director for this ad agency, and when COVID hit, they were like, you can go work from home, but we expect you to be at this desk 8 hours a day minimum, and still do the job. And so I'm sitting at a desk, and I can hear my kids in another room struggling. And I realized that like this life that I've carved out for myself, it's not a horrible life, but I could do better. Right. And so I started listening more around to see it. And I'm
Mm.
just like, shit, you know? Sorry, I'm gonna get a little, um, that was the moment I knew that I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. So I quit my job. I went to my wife and was like, "Hey, I have all these freelance gigs that I do on top of this job that I do, and I think that I might, I think that I can at least make the salary that I'm making at my other job if I just say I'm done and move over to this." Was able to stop. I started with like, okay, well, now I have this career that I've built for myself. I have these kids that are at home and need me constantly. I'm not chained to this desk, which I'll tell you the first couple months, that was a hard thing to get rid of. Was like, okay, nobody's going to get mad at me if I don't sit here all day. Right. And so I started with little things like I'll take them to, you know, the doctor's appointments. I'll take them to the dentist. I will make sure that all the groceries are picked up and you don't have to, because we were both working. Like that's the one thing that I don't ever talk about too is like I had a full-time job. My wife had a full-time job as well. And I had put the ownership of children on top of her. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, work existed, but it existed around whatever their schedules were. And like I put a lot of effort into making sure that they were the center of my universe first. And, you know, it was at first it was hard because there's to my kids, there's probably a lot of times when I probably felt like a stranger, because mom always did this stuff and now dad's doing it. Dad doesn't do it the same way that mom does it, right? And I, my wife even was probably in that same boat of like, hey, I do it this way, don't do it that way. And I'm like fighting with her. It's like, well, I've got to learn how to do it a way that works for me. And so, you know, I built a better relationship with my kids, and now they're like my favorite people in the world. And I think that if I had not, I mean, I know COVID was bad for a lot of people, and I don't like to, you know, assume that it was great for everybody, but for me, it was probably the greatest thing that ever happened, in terms of like how it changed my life and the trajectory of my life.
Mm,
Um, so, I'll never look at that time period as a negative. I mean, the first part of it was a little hard, but I grew a lot out of it. And, you know, it's something that and like I said, I just don't think I'll ever look back on that time and go, it was a waste. I don't know. But
yeah,
we got through it and we're closer now than ever.
that's good. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think, there's 2 more questions I ask every guest, but I think you've already answered maybe the second part,
I probably am.
which is the greatest learning, which sounds like COVID was a huge learning for you,
It is
as a dad.
definitely
But,
an
like,
eye opener. Yeah.
yeah, as a dad, like, what has been your greatest joy?
You know, I kids do a lot of stuff. And so you can easily pinpoint like little moments where like, oh, she learned how to ride a bike or, but I think the biggest joy of being a father is that I have raised along with my wife 2 daughters who can talk to us about anything. They don't sorry, I get a little it's hard. You got kids that get sucked into devices these days and there's school shootings and there's so many things for them to not want to talk to us about. And I feel lucky that I know that my kids know that if they ever needed to speak to me about anything, they could come to me. I'm an open book for them. And I don't sugarcoat things and I don't lie to them about the real world. Um, there's things that I keep from them that they don't really need to know. Like, uh, I don't, I try not to tell them every little detail. My wife probably thinks that I say too much sometimes, but like we're honest about the real world that the kids are expected to live in. We're honest with them about, what our expectations are. We try to share with them, like, here, I want to raise empathetic children. And so, you know, I don't, this life has granted us a pretty exceptional livelihood, right? We've been able to, we have a very nice house, we have a very nice life. I'm very comfortable, but I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in a trailer, and so I, it's part of me to make sure that they understand that what we have is something that we've worked for, and so they are not. to expect to just start out on third base when they go off in their life. We're not going to abandon them by any stretch of the imagination, but we share with them the hard work that we go through in order for them to know that this isn't just a given. you know we're very privileged. I talk to them about privilege a lot. I talk to them about what the world that they might adopt is could possibly look like, and how it might not be as equal and equitous as it should be, and that it is our job as people from privilege to constantly lift other people up. It's extremely important, and to not take what we have for granted or advantage. I don't know. It's Being a parent's hard. It's not an easy job. It's a full-time job that never stops, and you know, we're always learning too. So I just feel lucky that I have two kids that I can talk to and that can talk to me and know that we're gonna have honest, hard conversations, but real conversations, and that not just surface level shit.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I never know where these conversations will go, but I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing,
Yeah.
the highs, the lows, the realness. If folks wanted to follow you online, see your work, anything like that, where can they go to do that?
Well, I mean, I don't really you go to piedmontbrand.co, not .com. Our socials are at Piedmont Brand Co. You can also find me on deadtooth.art on Instagram. That's where, I put up my woke shit all the time. And catch me out on these streets. I really like meeting people at conferences, Crop, Creative South. You know, uh they're very important. Honestly, if there's anything outside of COVID that has been a benefit to my life in the last 5 years, it's gotta be design conferences, and not the big stuffy ones like Adobe Max. I don't know if they're a sponsor, and I'm sorry, but, no, uh, you're not gonna meet your people there. Go to the smaller ones, go find the local ones, go dive into your, creative mornings, or, wherever you can find other creative people that you can rub elbows with. Like, I've met some of the best friends I've ever had in my life there. And you know, I, I I definitely think that we need community. And I don't design in a silo. I don't create in a silo. I don't live in a silo. And so, I don't think anybody that wants to be successful should either.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on, Brad.
Dude, thank you for having me. It was great.